Okay, so Diane, just go ahead and tell us who you are, what you do, and where you're joining us from.
Yeah, sure. So hey to those in the room and everyone who is trickling in. So yeah, my name is Diane Wiredu, and I'm a conversion copywriter and a brand message strategist. So I primarily help SaaS and B2B businesses, although I've also worked with many different industries in the past, helping like hospitality and luxury fashion, et cetera, et cetera. And I help them, increase their sales, attract better leads, better clients, and boost their conversions. And I do that by writing copy and messaging. And my real focus as a conversion copywriter is obviously copy that converts. And so I really focus on research-driven copywriting, but also infusing a lot of personality. Bear with me. Infusing personality in there as well. So I do a lot of brand strategy work, and also making sure that that messaging really resonates with the customers using voice of customer research. So that's what we're going to be talking about here today, which should be really fun.
Awesome, awesome. So just give us like an idea for those who have heard of voice of customer research but don't know what it is. What is voice of customer research?
Yeah, that's a really good question to start with, right? Because I actually hate the term, and I wish, like, I hate, voice of customer sounds like this robotic thing, that I think we need to rephrase as something else. And like research and data is also something that I used to feel really like allergic to the idea of like research and data, because essentially what we're doing when we're gathering voice of customer and when we're researching is just listening and talking to our customers. And so through voice of customer research, what we're doing is just discovering what the customers wants, what their needs, and what their desires are, and how they think and how they speak about your product or your service, so that you can provide the most value in your messaging, right? And there's various ways that we can do that, which obviously I guess we'll get into here. But that's what it essentially is for me. It's just understanding how your customer thinks, how they feel, and how they see your product, your offering. And I'm probably going to keep saying product and service, but that can be anything. It can be service as well, right? Because the thing is, brands often talk to their customers in a completely different way than customers do. And when you have this kind of mismatch in messaging, that's where your copy and everything just goes to pot, basically.
Okay.
And what you work on voice of customer research as well. So what would your definition be, Chima? Would it be different to mine, or?
Yeah, like I that's the thing. I don't really work on voice of customer research because I'm kind of, let's say, lucky that when I work on projects, that research is already there. Like I'm not coming in and having to do that. It's someone else who has done the work. So which makes it more interesting because I feel like I'm here to learn more than I'm here to provide value, if I'm being honest.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. No, that's super interesting actually, because yeah, it's quite tricky. A lot of copywriters, sometimes if you work with agencies and things like this, then they do present you with the research. But for me, one thing that I love is just getting really hands-on with the messaging and actually speaking to customers and digging around, because I think there's nothing better than you can't understand your customer better than when you kind of had to trawl through sites and speak to them yourself. And it's such a good way to understand, like, is what I'm writing going to really resonate with them,
Okay. So what kind of brands? Is this something that every brand should have, or are there specific brands that should have voice of customer research?
So when we talk about doing voice of customer research, and obviously I'm going to be talking from the perspective of copy and messaging and as a copywriter, right? It should be used to inform all of your messaging. So it's not really just one particular part or one particular thing. Let's say, so I work on website and landing page and funnel copy and email copy and whatever, but the whole point is simply just understanding how your customers make decisions. and how they feel, you know. So if we talk about copy and the purpose of copy, which is driving people to take an action, so we want to persuade them, right? So on the one hand, you know, you need to have listened to, spoken, and understood what the customer is thinking, because otherwise you're not going to be able to produce a message that persuades, because we're just going to be guessing or projecting numbers, and then we can't actually write a message that is valuable to them. Because, you know, again, when we think about what copy is, and every single brand has an ideal customer, right? You're not trying to write to everyone, you're trying to write to that one ideal prospect. And so you want a message that is going to be relevant. And so listening to the way that they speak is going to make sure that what you're providing is really valuable. And also it's going to boost your kind of likability, your credibility as well. And then, like, on the other side of things, when I think of the role of copy, is that you want your copy to make an emotional connection with the reader. So not just logical, right? And that's what we can do with Voice of Customers, pulling out those emotional things that the customers say. And that's where I mentioned to you this idea of that Parmesan cheese on pasta, right? Which is like my favorite analogy, because you know, when you're writing copy that is purely logical, we don't make decisions based on logic. We make decisions based on emotion, right? We're super emotional beings. And so digging into all of those insights about the struggles and the fears and the pain points that you'll find when you actually dig around in customer research, then you can pull those out and sprinkle those on top of your copy. And that's what's going to, you know, make your messages much more persuasive.
Awesome, awesome. So walk us through the will I say the aspects of voice of customer research?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of actually carrying it out and the methods that we can do, or maybe like the kind of framework behind it.
No, the framework behind it.
Right. Yeah, this is really interesting actually, because you know, before we kind of get into where you can go and actually looking for the messages, because there's so many different places that you can dig into voice of customer. So we can talk about interviews, we can talk about surveys, we can talk about chat logs and reviews and all that kind of stuff. But one thing that I like to think about before that is, before you go in and speak to customers or read through hundreds of reviews, you've really got to know what it is that you're looking for. And the way that I kind of structure my research is I focus on 4 different messages. And so before I even go in, I know that I'm looking for wording and I'm looking for feelings and emotions that fit into 4 different camps. It could actually be more, but I tried to simplify this a little bit more because it could be 6, but I won't get into that. And the first thing that you're looking for is pain points, right? Or struggles. So what are the, you know, the underlying problems or the frustrations that your customers are going through when they're looking for a solution? And you want to know that so that then you can obviously frame your product or your solution or whatever as the end to that pain. And then the second thing that you're looking for is objections. You know, so there you're really looking for like points of resistance. You know, why wouldn't they buy from us, or what almost kept them from signing up or from buying for us? And you're kind of listening to, this one's a little bit harder to find. You can find this out when you actually get on the phone with someone and when you can ask them a question, but it's a little bit harder to look for when we're snooping around online, which we can get to a little bit later. And then the third thing is desires, right? So there you're looking for, and that's maybe where most people actually kind of like start and stop, but you're looking for what were the, you know, emotional drivers that like set them off searching for this product or this problem. You know, like what were they hoping to achieve? What were their really deep needs? And here you don't really want to focus on the surface level stuff. You're trying to keep asking that question why and go deeper and deeper. And the interesting thing with desire when we're thinking about copy is sometimes I think copywriters make the mistake of thinking that you can create desire. But copywriter, you can't create, it's not our job to create desire, but to actually channel that desire and direct it. You know, we're not trying to make people want something who don't have a problem. We're simply just trying to understand what their desire is and, you know, fit that within the messaging. And then the last thing is like the outcomes, right? The bigger picture things, so the benefits. So, you know, if you spend like more than a minute on LinkedIn, you'll see posts from copywriters talking about benefits over features. And, you know, I bang on about it as well. But here you really want to know, what does that future version of your customer look like after buying your solution or after buying a product? So like, you know, someone who, you know, is buying a concealer is just not just buying a concealer to like cover up a spot, right? They're buying, you know, that future version of themselves. They're buying someone who is like radiant, and, you know, so you're looking for that bigger picture. Someone's not just buying a dress, they're buying like this whole celebration of going on a night out and blah, 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 etc. So those are, before I kind of even get on the phone or dig around online, I have, you know, this spreadsheet where I have these 4 columns listed out. And then when I go in and I pull quotations and I look for messaging, then I kind of put those into those 4 camps, which is like this framework that I need before I go in.
Okay, I think it's amazing that you understand how important the psychological aspects matter, and how you need to find a way to, like, will I say, capture the essence of emotion and pain points before even talking about collecting that research. And this is actually what sets some of the best copywriters who do VOC research from everybody else. The fact that they consider these parts, because it's not just about customer interviews and reviews and all that stuff. This is the foundation that we inform how you group that research and what you do with their research. So this is awesome. So now let's move over to collecting VOC data. I want to start with customer interview because this is like the most popular one that people know about. When conducting customer interview for VOC data, what questions should you be asking?
Yeah, this is the magic, the magic question, right? And it's kind of unlimited. But I would say that the easiest way to split this and to think about this so that it's a lot easier for you is think that you want to ask questions that give you answers to what was going on with your customer before they bought your product or service, and then during, and then you want to know after. Right. So if you think about this, because as well, interviews can be quite tricky when you haven't really done them before, and you can get sidetracked and you can kind of go down rabbit holes. And so it's always good, before I go in, I kind of remind myself. Firstly, I remind myself in the beginning what my research goal is, which we didn't really touch on. But I think, you know, depending what you're writing, what piece of copy, if it's a home page or, you know, it's like a lead generation funnel, or if it's an email, like you don't ask questions that are useless and that don't lead you anywhere. You know, if you don't need to know, like, oh, how old are you, or, you know, then don't ask it. Or if you don't need to know, like, what time did you buy this product, then don't ask it. So firstly, don't ask like useless questions that waste time. Focus on the high level. Okay, you need to know what was going on before, what was going on during, you know, while they were using this product or the service, and then the outcome. And then kind of, if we're going to dig a little bit deeper into that, and, you know, really, really understand and unpack that first section of before, is you want to ask a question that answers the question, okay, what made them go looking for you? And one really good question that I actually learned from, like, Diane Wiredu, who's like, you know, original conversion copywriter, and so many conversion copywriters use this question because it's so good, is just what was going on in your day or in your business that brought you to this product or this service. And that is an open-ended question, which all of your questions should be. You should never ask leading questions that lead them towards a yes or a no or a whatever, you know. And it places them back in that moment when they were signing up or whatever, and they have to really think about the deeper the struggle or what was going on. And you'll get some amazing insights from that. So it's like, if you could only answer one question, and that is, well, it works in surveys, it works in interviews, but that's like a really key one to start with. And as like a precursor to that, I would always ask, think back to the moment when you were looking for a product, because also you want to set people, you could be speaking to someone on the phone who, I mean, ideally you'd probably want to speak to someone who's bought your product recently, but you could be speaking to someone who signed up for, in SaaS like 6 months ago. They don't remember, right? So in the beginning, I always like to say, okay, so can you just like think back and take yourself back into that moment, like what was going on? And then, just give them a bit of time to think about it, and then you can dig a bit deeper. So that's one really, really good question. Do you want me to go through some more, because I realize I'm like chatting away?
Yeah, like I also wanted to know, apart from customer interview, like what other ways do you use to collect VOC data?
Hey Chima, sorry, I actually just got cut out.
Yeah, no
I have
worries.
like a screen. Sorry, I have a screen limit on my phone, and it cut me out then, so I missed your question.
No worries. I said, what are the other ways to collect VOC data, and what specifically are you doing in each of these different techniques?
So there are loads of great ways, but 3 of my favorite are interviews that we've just talked about, surveys, and then the scrappiest and easiest method of them all is online reviews, and mining for reviews in places where your customers hang out. And again, this is not exhaustive, because depending on your business, your client's business, you can also do things like get chat transcripts, so for example, SaaS, if it's a support solution, when people are getting in touch and say, you have IT tickets, and what kind of questions are they asking? What struggles are they coming across? Or maybe if they have like a live chat support or chatbot, that's great too. You can also get on demo calls, so for example, right now I'm actually like really deep in, this is what I'm doing this week. I'm researching for my client who is a SaaS solution. And I'm asking them just, to invite me to all the demo calls, and I'm getting on demo calls and seeing how, what kind of questions the customers are asking. Sales calls as well, potentially. And they're great, because there you get really great insight into the before. You get insight into, well, what, on a sales call, someone is basically trying to suss you out. And they're asking you, okay, well, why are you better than the rest? What do you have? And that you get amazing insight into the thought process that goes into someone actually wanting to buy. And what else? I mean, it's kind of, it's kind of unlimited, but the lower barrier to entry. And again, I don't know where everyone who's listening now, depending on which markets they serve. Interviews and surveys are easy and great, and online review mining. Just we can dig in a little bit more into each of those, or into reviews or surveys. What do you think, Chima?
Yeah, like when I was working in house, we used to do a lot of review mining, especially when writing product copy. So that's like really big. So what would you advise copywriters to do to ensure that they're not going down a rabbit hole, because it's so easy to just get started and then never stop? So what specifically are you doing when you're review mining?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, I'm going to be really honest with you that sometimes I end up down rabbit holes myself. I really do. And I have to like stop and take a step back and be like, okay, this is enough. Because it's a really good question is also, when do you know you have enough? Like, when do you stop? Because you could keep going.
Yeah. Like when do you know that this is enough? What kind of reviews are you particularly paying attention to? And then when do you say, okay, I have 10 of this, or I have 20, or I have 30, and I see a pattern now. Okay, this pattern tells me what I'm looking for, and it's done.
Exactly. And you've just said something that is what you've said is the key, and that is a pattern, because that's what you're looking for, right? Patterns in data or everything. And so once you see a message repeated enough, then we know, okay, we're onto something. So in terms of reviews, I'll go back to what I said earlier, which is getting really clear on your research goal. So you should always have like a research question. You're not just looking around for no reason. You know what it is that you're selling, the challenges, because each product has a different challenge, because also it depends on, you know, the kind of stage of awareness of who you're selling to. You know, right now I'm working on a project that is like cold lead generation. So we're working really bottom of the funnel, and it's, you know, the prospects there are kind of unaware, very, kind of problem aware. And it's really tricky because I'm trying to understand that sticky point between, you know, when they don't know they have a problem, they do have a problem. So my research goal, I'm really clear on what that is. So before you go in, you've got to think, what are you looking for? Because otherwise you'll dig around and you'll spend hours and then you won't know. So I think that's the key thing here, if anyone takes away anything from that. And then, like I said, have those 4 camps. Remember that I mentioned earlier that you're looking for those pain points, you're looking for objections, you're looking for desires, and you're looking for outcomes. And that should keep you a little bit on track. And then when you're kind of pulling or copy and pasting or doing whatever it is that you do, then to pull those into those camps, and then you'll realize and you'll start to see patterns. And then, yeah, it's exactly what you just said. You start to realize, you know, after digging around for a little while, that people are kind of feeling the same thing. And I don't think that there's any clear answer as to like when to stop. I just think as well, you need to treat it like a, you know, like a time trial. Like set yourself, you know, a couple of hours or a short period of time and just go in and look around and gather as much as you can. And sometimes it's not really just like copy and pasting. Remember, for copywriting, you just want to understand the emotion behind it, and you're just trying to build a message strategy. So obviously you do want to pull out some quotations that are great and just like what we call like sticky copy that you could just pull, copy and paste and put it in. The initial thing that you should be focusing on is that kind of that strategy, like as well, how am I gonna take, you know, how am I gonna structure this message, and what's the most important thing? Because when we see patterns is an indication of a priority, right? So if, you know, 100, almost every customer is saying, man, the customer support here is so good. Like we love the customer support. And you think, okay, well, why is everyone saying that customer support is so much better? Like what are the competitors not doing? Or, you know, that's obviously really important that everyone is mentioning it and saying that, hey, you know, we've got 24-hour support and you feel super personal and one-to-one and human and et cetera, et cetera. And so you think, okay, well, that pattern, that's a priority. Let's dig in deeper as to why that's important. Why is that important to my customers? Because they're constantly mentioning it. So it must be, it's valuable to them. And so if it's valuable to our current customers, then it's going to be valuable to our prospective customers, because what you're trying to do with voice of customer research is replicate like your ideal customers by speaking the way that they do. And I think that's the key, isn't it? You know, you want more of your best fit customers. And so if you speak like your best fit customers and pull out their priority and their language and what they're saying, then you're bound to attract more. It's like the law of attraction.
Interesting. So now let's kind of like fast forward and to the point where you have all these VOC data, and it's time to do what I think is really the tricky hard work, which is grouping it and then using it. So now you have all this data, it's time to group it. How do you turn all those things your customers are saying into content that is engaging and converts? That's the first one I want to answer, like before I forget. How do you turn all those things that you've gotten from your VOC data, if you are writing content, if you're writing copy, into making sure that copy is engaging and that it converts, it reflects everything your customer is wanting to see from their pain points kind of view?
Yeah, and I think actually this is the trickiest part to explain, because I think that every copywriter kind of works in their own way, and I don't think there's any one way to say, you know, it's not really like, oh, plug and play this quote here, pull on this here. But I think that for copywriters you already have, and content writers like you, I know you're like a solid content writer. You have a structure, you have a framework, you have a way that you work. So work with the way that you work, and then just pull in all of this insight into the way that you work. So for example, copywriters are like infamous, you know, we use frameworks, right? Everyone kind of knows that probably. We use frameworks like, the PAS and problem, agitation, solution, or, ADA and, attract and interest, desire, etc., etc. And so if you're using certain structures or frameworks, things like this, then you'll know at which parts in your copy you really need to pull on those elements that you've gathered earlier. So when you were digging around, talking to your customers, looking around online, and you were understanding their pain points, and one particular pain point came up that was like, okay, we're wasting loads of time on manual input into spreadsheets and blah blah blah, and you're working on a solution that's this like automated SaaS solution. So then when you're working through your framework and you know that here is where you would actually be talking about the problem, then you hop over to your little pile of research and you dig out what you need. And in some cases, you can swipe quotations or, like sticky quotes word for word into the copy and, optimize it, because that essentially when you do things like that, then your customer's going to be reading through and like nodding along and thinking, oh my God, this sounds exactly like me. And it does, because it's their words, but they don't need to know, right? So yeah, I think that it's tricky without actually, and particularly being on like an audio only, to kind of walk you through this process. But I kind of map out, for each project, I map out the journey, right? And I map out the outline and what needs to go where on the page, or it really just depends on the type of thing that I'm writing. If I'm writing an email sequence, then potentially I'm going to be mapping out the messages for each email. If I'm working on a landing page, then I kind of know the structure of what needs to go where. And then I kind of dip back. I kind of look at voice of customer research as in two ways. One, when you've done all of that at the beginning of the project, it actually helps you map the structure. It helps you map the outline. So not just pulling out particular quotations, but if I've spoken to my customers and I know now what the biggest pain point is, what the biggest objection, then I know that I need to overcome those in my copy. So voice of, speaking to and using voice of customer data and the words of your customers isn't really just to, swipe quotations and put them in, but it helps you build this whole message strategy from start to finish. Because I know, okay, they need to believe this. They need to overcome that objection. I need to paint this picture of what their future is going to look like when they have the solution. So it also helps me, build out the whole thing. And then as I'm going through, I'm going to be going and checking back at those repeated themes and making sure that I've covered them throughout. So I don't know if that's helpful.
Yeah, that's really good, because I remember before I kind of decided to focus on just writing SEO content, I used to write landing pages, and something we used to do was that there was, like I said, there was always someone who was in charge of collecting all that voice of customer research and putting it inside the Excel spreadsheet. So I would go into that Excel spreadsheet and pick customers' words and put them as sub headlines, like basically just sprinkle it throughout the copy, so that it would be really really customer infused, and it would feel like words that you would want to hear or say if you were researching this specific product. So that's really really helpful. All right, so
Right. Like,
yeah.
for example, right now I'm digging around, and in fact, before this call, I was digging around on some reviews for a project I'm working on. And it's like a phone contact, like syncing solution. So really SaaS, really tech heavy. And one thing I've noticed is that all the users are talking about, I set it and forget it. I can forget about it. I can set this tool up and forget about it. And I wouldn't have thought that was something that they were saying. I wouldn't have said that until I dug around on, hundreds of reviews. And this is what is important, because we're talking, it's an enterprise SaaS solution, and they want really quick, easy setup, but they also want to set it up once and just forget about it. And so this has come up, multiple times, that it's a phrase that that they're using this like set and forget. So probably I'm still like drafting, I'm still at that like hypothesis and putting the outline together, but no doubt you will see in a couple of weeks like a landing page that says set and forget, because I'm just going to pull the words exactly, you know, right out of their mouths, and I'm going to use that.
Yeah. So next question. What are your best tool recommendations for collecting VOC data?
Ooh, but okay, let's dig a bit more in terms, like, what do you mean in terms of the two, like where to look, or
Yeah, like what tools are you using on website?
tools, right?
Tools,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, yeah. So I use a few tools, but not that many. So well, let's break it up into, depending on what you're going to do. So let's say you're going to send a survey, right? So for surveys, I love Typeform. So I just think that like Typeform, the way that their messaging is great. They clearly use like voice of customer because their branding is great and the user experience. But you could use things like SurveyMonkey. You can use, you know, integrated solutions. Also, there's tools like 4eyes. But you want something really easy that obviously your customer, your client can click on, and the user interface is, you know, very, very simple to use. So that's one for surveys. For the interview stage, one thing that I did mention, but it's get on video if you can, as much as you can, and try to make sure that you can. So, you know, obviously I use Zoom, you could use Google Meet, whatever it is, in your, you know, whatever video conferencing software that you use, but because you can also pull from the body language that you see, you know, and you can connect better with a customer or client when they can see you on video, and you can create a connection. So try to do that. I record the calls and then I get them transcribed. So I use otter.ai for transcription, but there are so many different tools. I actually was on Twitter yesterday and I found out a new one, which is called Descript, which a few people are saying is a lot better, the transcription. There's also Rev. Rev is better quality than Otter, but it's more expensive. So I stick with Otter because Otter is like an AI solution. So you will have to edit the output afterwards, but for me, it's enough, right? And you want to make sure that you're transcribing your interviews so that you aren't constantly looking down and taking notes and not paying attention. Because during the interview, like, firstly as well, I didn't even say this before, but don't call it an interview. So call it a chat. Just, you don't want to put someone off. Like, can you think of an interview that isn't stressful? Like, interviews are either job interviews or they're police interviews. So call it a chat, because when you say the word interview in an email to people, no one want to come. So yeah, record it, transcribe it so that you don't have to take notes. And then in terms of actually kind of going through and gathering and pulling, you know, going through your transcripts or going through review sites online, I want to use something, either a tagging tool or like a highlighting tool. So I use Evernote sometimes, because I can use the Chrome extension, obviously, and I can go through and I can tag different resources and bookmark them, so I don't have to then go through and, you know, think, oh, did I hit this site before? Did I not? I've heard really good things about Notion, but I don't know. I haven't used Notion yet, so I've heard that Notion, you know, does the same thing and anything else. But you want something to tag anyway. You want to be able to, if you're hitting a site and you're looking at comments on a blog, or you're on Quora, you're on Reddit, you know, you don't want to just be trying to remember where you've been and where you haven't been. And then my absolute favorite tool, and I've done a video run through of this. So actually, anyone who's on the call who hasn't seen, if you head to YouTube after this and you type in my name, because there's only one video of me on YouTube, then I did a talk for Winter Games, and I kind of walked through this, and you'll actually see me using this tool, and it's called Weaver. And Weaver is, again, another Chrome extension that you just have in your browser, and once it's turned on, then you can highlight.
Can you spell it?
You can yeah, spell it, sorry. W-E-A-V-A, Weaver. And it's a highlighting tool. So you can highlight your text. And what I do is I actually tag the colors. So I have red for pain points and I have yellow for objections. And then when I'm going through review sites like Amazon or G2, Capterra and all of that, then I'll tag the reviews and the quotations into those 4 different sections, those 4 different camps that I mentioned earlier, and then I'll download that, and it's just a lot easier for me to then, okay, put into a spreadsheet, or you just kind of want to streamline the process. And yeah, in terms of tools, I don't use much more, to be honest. Like it's quite a manual, intensive process. I was talking to, I'm in another kind of group, like a Facebook group, mastermind thing, with some other people in B2B, like B2B managers. And this question always comes up, like, oh, I've got loads of qualitative insights, or I've got loads of chat transcripts. Like, how can I like run this through some tool and like pull insights? And I mean, there are a few tools out there. I can't remember them off the top of my name. I probably could do a quick search right now. You could run them through and you can look at repeated words and things like this. But really, you want to read. You want to just read through. You want to read through and scan and get the gist and see for yourself like what keeps coming up. No tool is really going to do that for you. No tool is going to pick out it's really interesting language that you never would have thought of. You're gonna miss that if you use a tool. So it is quite manual intensive, but there's no 2 ways about it.
Awesome. So final question. For copywriters who want to offer voice of customer research as a service, but they're not sure how to bring it up during meetings with clients because it's not something that just comes up. How do you sell this as a service to your clients?
Yeah, I have conflicting opinions about this, because on the one hand, I don't think that you should really sell research as an add-on service. Like I've done it once and I'm actually kind of working on one of those now, but it's the whole piece, right? I was actually selling a whole research and strategy and looking into messaging recommendations. And so I've kind of sold something much bigger. But for every project, I think that research is part of your process. It should be built into your process anyway as a copywriter. Like, it doesn't matter the extent to which you do it, how deep you go, whether you're, jumping on 5 phone calls and then setting up surveys and all of that kind of stuff, whether you're doing that or you're just, being scrappy and looking around online and doing that. I think that some part of research is already built into your process. And I think that if you start pulling that out as a separate service, it gets a bit sticky, because you'll try to sell that to a client. And as you probably know as well, when you put different line items to a client, they look through and they're like, oh, can we reduce this? Let's just halve the research. And then can you deliver the same product without that level of research? No. So, I'd be wary of breaking this out as a line item. I would be looking more at perhaps different kind of levels, like different levels of service, and say, hey, this is like the minimum that I will do. So I am always, like, for me, I say to all my clients now, research is a non-negotiable part of my process. And actually it's the biggest part. I will spend more time on the research than I will on the writing, because that's where I'm going to get all my insights and feed into the copy. If a project is 4 weeks long, 2 weeks minimum is on research. Like, I won't write a word for the first 2 weeks, so don't even ask me. Right? So that's kind of, it is negotiable. But again, you need to get buy-in to your client. If you want to go and do interviews, then you need to, from the beginning, say, this is a minimum part of my project. Can you introduce me to a couple of people, because I need that for X, Y, Z. So I probably haven't really answered your question, but I think that it comes down to selling the value and selling your process as to why you need to do that, because it builds in. Like, your copywriter, we're not mind readers, right? I can't guess what your customers are thinking. I can't guess their pain points. We could try, but particularly for me, I'm a conversion copywriter. So if I want to deliver results, then we're going to need to have a look at the data. We're going to need to see what people are thinking and what they're saying. So Yeah, I just, you know, if you want to try and sell it, then go for it, but just make sure that you're selling the value and not just the service, because selling a project called research, like research is not sexy. No one wants to buy research. What you're selling them is like, wow, I'm going to be able to write copy that is going to sound exactly like your customer, and you know, it's going to push them to the next yes. It's going to be messaging that resonates with them, and you are going to get much more buy-in. You're going to get better clients. You're going to get, you know, whatever increased number of leads, and that's why I need to do research. Cool. Now they're going to say yes.
Awesome, awesome. I like the idea of selling it as part of, will I say, part of the conversion writing process, and probably explains why you have copywriters charging up to $7,000, $10,000 for one page. Because when you factor in how long it takes to do VOC research to gather that data that feeds the copy, then it completely makes sense. So thank you for that clarification, Diane. I'm going to end the recording now so we can take questions if anybody has them.